You ever have a morning where you think, today's the day, everything finally goes right, and then the universe just laughs in your face? That was me tightening the last screw on my brand new mailbox, the one I'd picked out because, hey, I thought a little slate gray might class up the block. The sun was shining just right, birds doing their thing, everything peaceful, until I saw them. HOA board full formation marching across the street like they were about to serve a warrant. Mara Green in the front sun visor locked in place clipboard like a scepter. Doug right behind clutching a tape measure as if he was born holding one. I just nodded. Morning. But Mara, she didn't do small talk. She launched straight in. Mr. Carter, your mailbox color is non-compliant. Oakrest Meadows standards. She says it like the standards were handed down on stone tablets. I looked at the mailbox. Slate gray. Not exactly neon pink, right? I grinned. That's fine. I'm not under your HOA. For a second, her face went through about 6 emotions: confusion, offense, then this look that said, I will outlast death just to spite you. Doug, meanwhile, snorted like he'd caught me parking on the moon. Every house on this street is under our HOA. Not this one, I said, calm as you please. You might want to check your map. I don't think they'd heard that before. Mara's voice sharpened. You can't just opt out. Go ahead. Call whoever you need. Doug was already whipping out his phone. Somewhere a patrol car started to hum closer, red and blue lights dancing across perfect driveways, all my neighbors peeking from behind curtains, phones in hand. That's Oakrest for you. No crime in sight, just 3 people about to have an existential crisis because they thought they ran my life. Here's the thing, they didn't know. I didn't just own my house. Technically, I owned the dirt under their feet too, but we'll get to that. Oakrest Meadows? Yeah, that's where I landed. Looks like the kind of place that should be on a jigsaw puzzle box. Every house at a perfect angle, 3 legal shutter colors, lawns trimmed like they were all cut by the same robotic sheep. The air, it's almost too quiet until someone finds a rule to enforce, and then suddenly the birds stop singing. When I first bought the place, I was 36, still am an engineer by trade. Numbers, not neighbors, you get me? The house came from a county auction foreclosure paperwork so old it crackled. Most people skipped right over it, but I saw potential. I like fixing what's broken: houses, engines, sometimes even my own life. Did I know the neighborhood ran on rules instead of kindness? Not right away. But you can feel it if you're paying attention. People wave, but it never lasts more than half a second. The sprinklers, I swear they all click on at 6:04 a.m. as if the HOA programmed the sun. And yeah, in the center of it all, Mara Green. Queen Mara, I started calling her in my head. Never elected, just assumed power. Her reign's older than most of the trees on the street. Her favorite phrase, community standards are non-negotiable. Like she was born with a bylaw in her hand. Doug, her enforcer, I guess. He'd issue you a fine before breakfast just to feel alive. My first week, I got a note taped to the garage. Welcome to Oakrest Meadows. Trash bins out of view at all times. 2 days later, porch light 25 watts above community standard. I hadn't even unpacked, and already I was the villain. At first, I didn't care. I've lived in cities taking orders from people with more ego than skill. Mara and Doug. Just the suburban remix. But the tone, oh the tone. This isn't just your house. It's ours. And we'll decide what color your mailbox should be. And my neighbors. They smiled, nodded, did what they were told. But you could see it in the way they closed their garages when Mara drove by, the way Doug's shadow made them mow their lawns twice. Me, I don't do well with control freaks. Never have. Not pride. Just a habit of holding my own ground. That's why I bought the place at the edge of the block next to the thin stretch of county greenbelt. It was nothing fancy, but it felt like breathing room. I liked knowing I could step outside and not hear HOA chatter echoing off every fence. But then the warning signs. The side eye when I parked the wrong way, the email reminders, the neighborly advice with a thread underneath. Oakrest looked perfect from the curb, but control wore a mask called community. And the price for peace, well, apparently it was $75 a day. Yeah. One Tuesday envelope in my mailbox, violation 00001, unauthorized mailbox design. Official notice HOA logo bold font. My name right at the top. Deadline repaint or pay the fine. I actually laughed until I flipped to the signature. Mara Green, President. It wasn't a mistake. It was a warning. Now here's where it gets funny. I'd actually read the HOA packet just for kicks. There was a map, all the lots in yellow. But mine had a faint outline that ran past the HOA's boundary, almost invisible unless you like details, which I do. I traced that line twice. My lot wasn't in the shaded area. Just to be sure, I called the county. Nice lady named Janet picked up. I asked, is 2049 Oakrest Lane in the HOA? She typed clicked, then said, nope. That parcel's outside the charter. County property. They can't touch you. You ever feel the weight just lift? Like all the post-it notes on my door were just static. Gone. 6 hours later, email from Mara. Immediate compliance is expected. Annexation clause, section 9D, visible frontage. You'd think she was prepping for war. Legal escalation, local authorities, all the threats. I just shook my head. Annexation clause. That was like writing finders keepers in crayon and hoping it held up in court. Still, she'd made it clear this wasn't about a mailbox. It was about power, and I just challenged the board. Time to get organized. Printed Janet's email, made a folder, HOA correspondence, engineer habits. Always document before you dig in. That invisible line in my yard suddenly felt like a trench. The next week it was open season. Fines, photos, more letters than a small post office. Every morning Doug or someone else from the board would walk by taking pictures of my mailbox, my lawn, my driveway. I ended up on the neighborhood forum, a blurry photo headline, non-compliant property threatens aesthetic. Neighbors started acting strange. Some avoided my yard. Some whispered, some left notes. They did this to the Wagners too. Don't back down. Guess I wasn't the first casualty. So I started digging deeper. Pulled every letter, every screenshot, every fine. I cross-checked the plat map with the county database. The big discovery. The HOA charter on file was last updated 2018, back when they tried to expand. But the paperwork pending submission. 6 years still not submitted. Which meant the HOA was ruling over land that wasn't theirs. I needed to see it for myself. See it. The county registrar's office smelled like old paper and cold coffee. I explained my situation to a guy in wireframes buried under maps. He checked his screen, shrugged. No expansion filed. You're outside the HOA all the way back to the 2010 survey. Showed me the map crystal clear. Let me guess, they're still trying to fine you. He laughed. They always forget bylaws aren't the law. He printed me a certified map, stamped and everything. And on that map, utility easements running through my yard and into the neighborhood. Turns out their signs, their irrigation, even a drainage path, all crossing my land. Suddenly I had leverage. Back home, I laid out everything on my table. The fines, the maps, the certified documents. Outside my mailbox looked almost heroic. That night, another email. Final warning. Willful defiance. Police involvement. I wasn't angry. I was amused. They'd shifted from non-compliance to rebellion. Guess they'd finally taken it personally. Then came Saturday. Mandatory compliance hearing. Flyers slipped under every door. When I stepped outside, the cul-de-sac looked like a courtroom. Folding chairs, Mara at a podium, Doug with a stack of evidence, one cop leaning on his cruiser. Neighbors watched, pretending to text, but really just waiting for a show. Mara kicked it off. Refusal to comply with community standards. I cut in. You can't refuse something you were never part of. Gasps. Mara tried to keep control. Let the record show homeowner is uncooperative. Doug scribbled furiously, like the ink would make it true. I let her run through her list: mailbox, landscaping, obstruction of visual uniformity. I actually laughed out loud at that one. When she finished, I asked Mara, under which recorded covenant are you enforcing these rules? She stammered, dodged. All of them. Not an answer. I said I checked the records. Last valid filing 2010. No annexation. No expansion. No legal authority over my lot. You could see Doug's face go pale. Mara tried. We've enforced these rules for years. Doesn't make it legal, I shot back. Just means no one checked. The officer watched quietly, amused. Mara's face redder than her hydrangeas. We will not tolerate rebellion. I'm just asking you to follow your own rules. That got a few nervous smiles from the crowd. Doug began reading the annexation clause. I stopped him. May extend, not does. Only if the amendment was filed and approved, which it wasn't. The murmuring grew louder. Mara slammed her binder. You will repaint that mailbox or face legal consequences. I looked to the officer. Actually, can you clarify something for us? He strolled over, sunglasses hiding everything except the faintest hint of a smile. Mara repeated her charges. The officer looked at me. I handed over the certified map and deed. He took his time, sunlight glinting off the embossed seal. The neighborhood held its breath. Finally, he said, Ma'am, he's right. This property isn't under your HOA jurisdiction. You could have heard a pin drop. This is a civil matter, he continued, not a criminal one. The HOA can't enforce rules where it has no authority. Mara tried to argue, we'll pursue annexation retroactively. Good luck, I said. The county rejected it 6 years ago. Some people actually laughed. Doug tried to write up a final notice. The officer raised his citation pad but just rested his fingers on it. Let's all take a breath, he said. I handed him every document. He reviewed, nodded. County records are clear. Unless you can prove otherwise, Mr. Carter's in the right. Mara sputtered about visible frontage. The officer deadpanned, annexation isn't contagious. Laughter. She tried to escalate. I'll contact the sheriff's department. He raised an eyebrow. You're talking to them. Doug's bravado dissolved. We just wanted compliance. There's a difference between compliance and harassment, the officer replied. And for the first time, Mara's grip on that clipboard slipped. The crowd, my so-called neighbors, looked between her and me, not sure who they'd been siding with, but suddenly glad the spell had broken. After that day, the HOA went quiet. No more letters, no more fines. But I could feel it, that quiet wasn't surrender, it was the kind of calm that comes before someone tries again. So I spent my evenings on the county website auction listings. And wouldn't you know it, 3 parcels up for bid. The retention lot behind the clubhouse, the walking path, a utility buffer, all technically in common areas. But the deeds were lapsed, ownership reverted to the county. By the end of that week, all 3 were mine. Recorded legal, stamped with the same seal that had saved me once already. Next board meeting, I brought a lawyer and a sheriff's deputy. Mara tried to bar me at the door. Attendance is for residents. Actually, I said I'm a property owner several times over. 3 deed folders on the table. Mara stared. The lawyer explained, calm as water. These are now Mr. Carter's parcels, including the land under this building. The silence. It wasn't shock. It was relief. Doug muttered, Those are community properties. Not according to the county, the lawyer said. The developer's transfer deed was never filed. HOA never owned the land. Mara looked like she'd aged a decade in a minute. And I wasn't there for vengeance, not really. I told them I'm not shutting this place down. The park, the trail, the hall, you can use them rent-free. All I ask is the HOA dissolve its claim. The sheriff backed me up. That's fair. Mara, deflated, finally got it. You're doing this to humiliate me. No, Mara. You did that yourself when you tried to call the cops instead of checking a map. That landed harder than any fine ever could. Neighbors applauded. The sunlight through the windows, honestly, it felt like the room itself exhaled. Betty from the back row grinned. Always knew that woman would pick the wrong fight. I laughed with her. Guess I was just the unlucky lottery winner. The unraveling was fast after that. The HOA's private chats leaked. Doug tried to wipe everything, but the neighborhood saw it. Call the cops, make an example. People resigned, websites went offline, forum turned into a blank page. County issued a statement. Oakrest Meadows HOA no longer has legal jurisdiction over the properties. Which is lawyer speak for, you've got no leg to stand on. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The neighborhood started waving at me again, banana bread on my doorstep, Betty bringing apologies with a smile. Even Doug, now 2 streets over, dropped by. I sleep better without all the meetings. The HOA dissolved, replaced by a group that ran on coffee funds and respect not rules. I donated the park parcel back to the neighborhood for public use with 1 plaque. Respect is stronger than rules. I'd see kids playing there, drawing chalk suns on the sidewalk. Nobody cared if the mailboxes matched anymore. And Mara moved out within a week. Her house sold fast. I watched the new owner's young couple golden retriever hang a hammock between 2 trees. The world looked normal finally, maybe even honest. Now people ask, how did it happen? How'd one mailbox take down a whole regime? I tell them they called the cops. I called the county. Always gets a laugh. But the truth, I just wanted to be left alone, and that simple wish, that's what fixed everything. A few months later, the old hearing hall was a book swap. Kids painted in the windows. Even the sheriff stopped by, once smiled and said, "You took the law out of the wrong hands." "I just read the fine print," I joked. He grinned. That's where the truth always hides. Now, as I walk past mismatched mailboxes and listen to laughter instead of gossip, I realize imperfection fits us. The biggest lesson: justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it shows up quietly under bright skies when truth finally stands its ground. So let me ask you, ever had to stare down power dressed as protection? Ever see the day when sunlight was all the permission you needed to live honest? I'd love to know, what would you have done standing there with a slate gray mailbox in a room full of rules? Or have you ever had to fight for your right to just be left alone? Tell me your story. Because out here in Oakrest, finally, it's the stories that matter most.